AI can give you superpowers in certain ways. And it means that you can basically make your products a lot better. You can make your customer service a lot better. You can make your reach out, all those sorts of things. Things that I think small businesses and medium-sized businesses can be focused on.
Hello and welcome. Today we're talking about AI, the use cases and the impact on small business. I'm actually joined by a longtime colleague of mine, Sam Witteveen. He's the head of Red Dragon AI, which is a machine intelligence company, and he runs different trainings and builds AI solutions for companies. He's actually pretty super techie, and I'm not, so I'm going to be a little bit of a translator here. I want to kind of find out what's in his brain and think about the real world applications and implications for small business when it comes to AI. Now, I think it's pretty obvious for a lot of business owners that this technology is hugely disruptive. And like a lot of new technology, though, when you just get started, it's about going, where are the real world applications? And that's a big part of what I'd love to explore today. So maybe first things first, just like to welcome you to the call, Sam.
Thank you. It's good to be here. It's good to catch up after a long time.
Yes. So I know you've been going deep into the topic of AI for a good number of years now. I'm just curious, when you first came across AI, was it like immediately obvious to you that this was a big thing? And from seeing it, how long to actually going, I need to get involved in this and do something about it? What sort of time frame was that?
So I guess originally I got into machine learning. So most of what I'm going to talk about is more what I would call machine learning, right? Rather than AI is more a marketing term, but it's definitely a term that people use now. So originally I had a startup doing apps, and so I used machine learning to basically reverse engineer the Apple App Store. And that worked really well. It led to sort of like, millions of free downloads on the App Store and stuff like that. And I got really fascinated with it. Like I got really interested in sort of what we would call predictive AI now, where you're basically, using algorithms to make a very specific prediction, perhaps a little bit different than generative AI. And that led to getting interested about 10 years ago in a thing called deep learning. And deep learning at that stage was very nascent, but it was clear that there was something happening. And then I think by the time 2016 came around, it was really clear that this was going to be the future, that this was going to be a lot of things going on. Um, and that led, I ended up meeting my co-founder of Red Dragon AI. We founded Red Dragon AI in 2017. We've done, a bunch of different things. We're a Google partner. I do a lot of work with Google. Like I said before we record, I'm wearing a Google t-shirt. I don't actually work for Google. Um, but I do a lot of work with Google. In 2017, Google appointed me one of their first 12 machine learning experts in the world, developer experts in the world. And that's led to a whole bunch of interesting things as we've gone along. I'm sort of currently one of the testers of Gemini and a bunch of things that Google's sort of yet to release. I, and so like, yeah, I've had a sort of front seat at this. And I guess from reasonably early on, it was pretty clear that some of these things were going to be big. We had, we do a lot of research stuff, and we've had, papers at most of the sort of top machine learning conferences around the world. And we had our first paper on LLMs in 2018.
Yeah.
And even back then, it was sort of like, wow, okay, these things are definitely different. They're kind of interesting what you can do. And I guess for us, we kind of saw this as being like incrementally getting better over time. And then sort of when ChatGPT came along, it became like that was the obvious sort of consumer thing where suddenly people were now like, oh, this stuff works. And it sort of led, to a whole bunch of different things. Since then, I accidentally started a YouTube channel to just make some videos for friends. It's now got about 65,000 subscribers. And I mostly talk about things like LLMs and generative AI on that kind of thing. So did I think, I guess to answer going back to your question, it's sort of about 10 years ago, it really started to become obvious that this was going to be a thing. And I think sort of around 2016, 2017, you could see a clear path. Not that any of us thought that all this stuff would probably get to where it is now, and where it's sort of going in the next couple of years. But it was clear that it was definitely something that you could make really cool stuff with. I will say that.
Yeah. You mentioned deep learning. How does that kind of fit into the picture as far as like people are familiar with ChatGPT and maybe they're starting to explore, oh wow, there are other LLM models here that I can test out and different use
Okay,
cases for
so
yeah,
fundamentally, deep learning is the technology behind all of this stuff. So whether you're talking about ChatGPT, whether you're talking about the things like the image generators and stuff like that, it's all fundamentally deep learning at the back end of it, the algorithms. Now, the thing with deep learning is that you need a lot of compute, you need a lot of data to make this stuff work. And sort of around 10 years ago, it was clear that this stuff was starting to work way better than anything else, but we didn't sort of have anywhere near the amount of compute that you have now. So the compute is probably 2 or 3 orders of magnitude of what we were using back then, uh, and same for the data, probably even more so for the data. And
yeah,
so combining these things suddenly made this whole thing explode. And then the sort of what the consumers see is like a large language model, or something like that. And fundamentally, large language models are actually very simple kind of things, right? They're just trained originally to predict the next word or the next token. Uh, and it turns out that just by reading the entire internet and learning to predict the next word, you can then get a really interesting kind of intelligence in quotation marks, which then can be sort of changed with a few other algorithms to make it what you see with ChatGPT today. Uh,
yeah.
and that's really only come about in the past sort of 3 or 4 years,
Yeah.
that people started to see that.
I definitely feel like the ChatGPT moment was for a lot of business owners the bit where they went, "Oh wow, this is real, it is here, this is very much what's
Yeah.
possible." And now, I mean, it happened before that, but a huge amount of capital is getting attracted into the space. And we're seeing a lot of investment into AI and some of these technologies. It kind of feels a little bit like a bubble where, like the internet, where all the money gets sucked in and it basically grows exponentially very quickly, has the potential to burst, and then some really great companies emerge on the other side of that. I'd be interested in your thoughts if that's something that you think, or hey, we're beyond the bursting of the bubble opportunity here now. We've got the
I
real
think I think it's both. So I generally try to live in Singapore. I spend a bunch of time traveling and in the States. So in May, I was over in the States for the entire month. I just me making some comments to some VCs about, like, are these frameworks that people are putting money into kind of suck? And they'll ask me why, and I explained. I literally had a VC there go, okay, I'll give you $3 million on the spot to start a company to do this, right? And if you want more, then let's talk, right? Kind of thing. So that is some ways I kind of feel it kind of a bubble, yes,
yeah,
right? Um, but that said, that this stuff isn't going to get worse. It's only going to get better. One of the sort of catchphrases that people use in AI is that it's today is the worst it will ever be, right? Meaning that, but from now going forward, it just gets better. I and this is the thing that so I think that a lot of people don't get is that they criticize the models and they say, oh, well, the model gets this wrong, it gets that wrong. It's like, yeah, but 2 years ago, it couldn't do any of this stuff, right? So think of where it will be in a year's time. Think of where it will be in 2 years' time. I, and yes, we will see, I think financially, like, yeah, Nvidia has been, it has been so valued so much, stuff like that. Its valuation has gone up so quickly. You'll definitely see pullbacks and stuff like that. It was actually funny that in May, I got invited to the NVIDIA campus for a day, and it's this amazingly big building that cost $1 billion to build or something. And I kind of sat there with notebooks. So only this many GPUs, right? Is all you had to sell to pay for this. And if you factor that down and work out, well, that's only this much sand. Suddenly you start realizing, wow, okay, this whole thing is built on a lot of interest, just sort of interesting things. But the thing is, it's not going to go away, right? So
yeah,
yes, you will see pullback on valuations. Yes, the as an investment sort of thing, you may see some sort of mild winter, although I don't think you're going to see a huge winter. Um, but fundamentally, this stuff is going to be used more and more. And if I think you talked about .com, right? That's a really good example. Is that yes, there was a big pullback after the .com, but if you think about then when AdWords came along, right? The businesses that were smart enough to pick up on AdWords and buy the really cheap clicks back in those days. This is something that you and I used to play in, a field that we used to play in, right? Were the businesses that really did well compared to their competitors. That
Yeah.
suddenly they were able to move quickly enough to realize, oh, this is definitely a thing. And I could jump in here at sort of the ground floor and benefit from it. And I think you're seeing the exact same thing with AI agents, with a whole bunch of the different things that are starting to happen. And the interesting thing about AI in comparison to that sort of previous wave is that actually AI benefits people who've already got customers. If you've
Yeah.
got customers already, it's actually there's lots more things that you can do with the AI than just trying to use AI to get customers. It's not a sort of marketing channel, whereas the internet was more and things like pay per click and stuff like that were a really good marketing channel. AI is not that, right? AI is like it can give you superpowers in certain ways. Uh, and means that you can basically make your products a lot better. You can make your customer service a lot better. You can make your, reach out, all those sorts of things are things that I think, small businesses and medium-sized businesses can be focused on.
Yeah, it's really trying to find those use cases. And I mean, part of this for a business owner is at least getting exposed to what it is, understanding some of the language, thinking about how and where it can help. And there are different models. We talked about ChatGPT, but there's Claude, and you mentioned Gemini and Grok and Perplexity. And a lot of these tools are almost like generalized tools. And it's like, how do you then go from this general tool that can do a lot of things really, really well to then narrowing down? Sometimes people are building tools on top of these platforms to solve very specific use cases. But I'd love your thoughts on, with this seemingly infinite amount of possibility, how and where should business be thinking about, I'm going to apply this in my business to get this win?
So, all right. So I think there's a few ways of looking at it. So the models themselves, you should start thinking of them as being interchangeable, right?
Yep.
They're all sort of converging, they're all getting better. On any one day, one model, one company may have a model that's better than the other, but they're starting to average out, right? Right. And the interesting thing is, as they're averaging out, it's not that they're averaging out to a low level. They're all averaging out to quite a high level. I and the thing that most people don't realize is that it's not just the intelligence that's sort of getting to be sort of standard. It's that the costs are coming down massively. And so we've sort of got three things. We've got models getting smarter. We've got the ability to put more information in the models. So this is what we call larger context size windows. And we've got the token speeds going up. So that would be the third one. And then actually a fourth one is the cost is coming down. There are a lot of sort of internal predictions which are holding true that costs will be 1/8 at the end of this year of what they were at the start of this year. And it's not going to stop there. These are going to get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. So what used to basically cost you maybe $70 per million tokens and make it just too expensive to build something for a small business or something like that, you're looking at already that's down to maybe $3 per million
Yeah.
tokens. And you're going to see it get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And so then it really comes down to, how creative are you in your business and this is where, I guess partly you're interested in it so much is what systems do you have? Right. The thing I would say about it, and I was thinking about this before we talked today, right? So I'm a big fan. I can remember, the last time we spoke, if you remember, you were just telling me about the idea for systemology and stuff like that, and the whole thing. And I was like, yeah, okay, I get it, right? And I get it because both of us are very big into outsourcing, right? That I'm coming up on, I think it's 18 years since I hired my first outsourcing people. Uh, and the thing about the only way to get outsourcing to work is to have systems, right? Like if we're really honest, you've got to you've got to basically get things in a way that people can do it. Now, here's the thing, is if you make a great system in your business and you give it to a person, you can get, maybe 1 or 2x out of that, right? And then you can basically give that to 10 people, which you're paying, and you're getting a return on your investment. Think of AI as where you can give it to 100,000 people
Yeah.
for the same cost, right? So this is where I think people are not sort of thinking about it, is that if you think about AI at the moment as not like some super genius, but kind of like an average, maybe a smart intern in your company, right? And if you've got a smart intern or even an average intern, that if you can guide them right and you can get them to do stuff, that's really cheap labor, and it's really, they can get a lot done without you having to be involved if you've got the system set up, if you've got all that. AI is exactly the same. So that could be things like, after every time someone buys something from you, you've got, maybe at the moment you've got some kind of email that contacts them for asking for a referral or doing that kind of thing. You can automate all of this. All this stuff can be automated, and it can be automated not just in a way of where you've got an email that basically says, hey, thanks for buying from us, could you give us a referral, something like that. It can now be totally personalized to them. Hey, thanks for buying product X, and we just wanted to tell you, here are the best ways you can use it and stuff like that, and we noticed that you're in such and such a place, and put all that in there. By the way, we'd love to get some more referrals in your area of town or whatever it is, or your kind of business. And because it can be so much, personalized so much, it's going to be just far more effective. We know this already from, sort of marketing and stuff like that, that the more we can personalize a message, the better it sort of lands. We know this from Facebook ads. We know this from a whole bunch of different things. So if you think of like the current AI as being able to do these kind of tasks at sort of 10,000x of what you would, currently pay people to do it, meaning that the reach, for the same amount of money, you can just get so much more done. Think of it that way.
That idea, like when we think of some of these AI models and we go to the chat interface and we type in a question and it does something and then it comes back, then we layer, like I think a lot of people are familiar with that idea. The idea of then AI agents that are able to execute some of what you're talking about, like workflows and, you know, giving the agent some knowledge on a particular role or something inside your organization. Like, I'd love how you imagine that could happen, because yes, you could potentially, recently saw an interview with Mark Zuckerberg, and he's like, yeah, potentially people are going to have thousands of different AI agents working for them, executing all of these different tasks. So I'm just wondering how you see kind of that next step.
Yeah, no, totally. Like this is, we're sort of in the process of making this happen, right? So at the moment, we can build simple agents that do things like last year, I built an agent that could basically just answer emails, right, for a business. And we set it up where, so do you know the TV show Westworld? As a demo
Yes.
of this, we set it up like that. Basically, this was a person who worked for the Delos Corporation and answered emails about the resort Westworld. And we opened
Yeah.
it up to a bunch of people and just said, have at it, right? Like, see what, because we were also wanted to see, like, okay, how good is this going to be, this kind of thing. And we gave it a bunch of knowledge about Westworld. We gave it like the scripts for like all the first season. We gave it like a whole bunch of the wiki and stuff like that about Westworld. And it was amazing that it could, people could email it and say, hey, I'm thinking about, and we gave it some information like, this is what the pricing is, this is what the sort of rules are, this is the minimum age, that kind of thing. And so sure enough, we tested it to see like, okay, if I say, hey, I'm thinking of coming with my 2-year-old kid, it would say, oh, I'm sorry, but the minimum age is like, 14 or something like that, right? Um, and so it got those things right. But the things that I found fascinating about it was that it had enough sort of world knowledge in there, or enough sort of knowledge about this topic, so that when people sort of said, hey, I would like to meet, the character Maeve and stuff like that, right? It was like, oh yeah, no problem. Yeah, she's at the, she's at the bar every day around about this time. You could just come along and meet her. But when people said, "Oh, I want to meet Ford," right, the creator of Westworld, it understood that he wasn't a character in the game, and sort of said, "No, no, no. I Dr. Ford's very busy. It's very hard to get a meeting with him. You probably won't see him in the park day to day, kind of thing." So and that wasn't something that we programmed into it. We by just giving it the sort of the sort of boundaries of this world and a whole bunch of data around it, it was able to answer a whole bunch of different questions. And I kind of feel like that's sort of where we're at the moment, is
Yeah.
getting these things to be able to do stuff like that. It was able then, giving it some memory and stuff like that. It was able to remember an email conversation that you had with it, doing all that sort of stuff. Um, you know, we're sort of at that point now. The next step that we're all working on, and I think this has been announced publicly, so I can talk a bit about this from from Google's perspective, is that in things like workspaces in Google, you will have virtual employees that will just be in there. And that virtual employee will be, a part of all your projects. And you'll be able to tell them, hey, I have to give I have to put together a pitch deck to give to Dave from Systemology next week. Can you, one, go and do some research about his business, then look at all the pitch decks I've done before, work out what would be most relevant to him, and put together a slide presentation for it, right? And you're going to see that happen. Probably in the next 6 months to 12 months, that's going to start to become normal. We're already building some things like that for companies. So at the moment, the people that are at the moment, because we're kind of very early on, it's like hedge funds and stuff like that have got lots of money to spend, and they've got lots of data. They're sort of prime sort of things, and so like they're building things of where people, their team can ask about stocks and find information out. And it turns out that for they're not at the moment sort of automatically looking for something like automated trading, right? So this is, I would say, think about this from a small business perspective too, right? So you would think a hedge fund, the key thing is trading, right? Yes, that is. But then you've got all these sort of ancillary things around it. So for them, like doing research into a company is actually what they spend about like 50% of the time doing. And so when that can be automated, that then frees up a lot more time for sort of evaluating different strategies. And I think the same is true for small businesses, right? As people start to look at these agents that are coming, we're still not there yet perfectly with a lot of the agents that are out there. A lot of them sort of work 70% of the time, don't work, a lot of the time. Definitely with what's sort of publicly available, things that are, kind of like that. But you could imagine that once you start to get something where you could just say, right, okay, these are all, ancillary tasks that we could basically, think about it. If you could take a really good intern and just train them to do that task, this is going to be the same with agents. I
Yeah.
think that's the way to think about it.
I think that's one thing I'm saying to a lot of the business owners that I work with at the moment. You need to be thinking about your data and how you're organizing it. So you're going to have it ready to be able to deploy it to train a specific agent on your policies or your internal procedures around tasks that you want to have completed to a certain way, or uh, any customer support tickets. Like, it's all about that data training the machine, and then as the machines get better, it'll then be able to execute different things for you. So I think preparing the data is step one, and then step two is just playing around with the chat interfaces and getting familiar and just starting to think, what am I doing? I feel like that's where a lot of people go wrong with the AI, is they're asking it to do things that they're not doing in the day-to-day business, and they're just going, oh, because this AI tool can generate me 1,000 cat videos, and it's done it at the click of a button, and AI can do it, and it doesn't cost me anything to do it. Oh, okay, well, let's do it because it's a good idea. When really what they should be thinking about is, well, what are you doing? And you're already, like, in the business. You mentioned a few things like customer service And I mean, phone customer service and training it around your business to answer queries and emails. I'm wondering what other applications you're seeing, like real world in small business.
So just let me just go hop on a point you just made. Don't throw away your data, right? Like if you've got Zendesk for 5 years where you've answered all these, customer things and stuff like that, that is gold, right? That kind of thing is absolutely gold. Uh, and so you want to make sure that you're keeping that. You want to make sure that, using it and different ways of using it and getting it in the right format, all those things are technical things that can be done. Just first of all, make sure that you've got it right. That's the thing. I would suggest if you've got any kind of business at the moment where you're doing outbound sales with like phone sales or something like that, try and record the calls. I'm seeing from things that I've sort of consulted on, stuff like that, the companies where they've just recorded like thousands of calls suddenly now have this database that they can then just look at which calls were successful, which calls weren't, and work out why.
Yeah.
And then as they're, even though they haven't perhaps crossed over yet to getting an agent to do the outbound calls, which can be done, right? There are definitely sort of ethical issues around that, or do you sort of disclose that this is not a real person that's calling someone? And then if you do disclose it, you have the whole issue around how will people act differently? So this is one of the things that Google had. So Google had a product where it could basically be part of like Google Assistant, where you could say, "Hey, go and make a hairdressing appointment for me," and it would call up the hairdressing appointment and say, "Right, Sam wants to get his hair cut tomorrow at 9 a.m." And it would sort of negotiate with them that, "Oh, okay, you're busy at 9 a.m., but 9:45 you're okay. Well, Sam told me any time between 9 and 11 is cool, so I know that that's good." Right. And these things were these things worked really well, right? And this is, we're talking about sort of 4 or 5 years ago. The challenge became people freaked out about it, right? People freaked out that it sounded too much like a real thing. The other thing too was it was all built on the sort of point that the customer is always right. So it was sort of a flip of like when the customer's always right, if you don't understand what I say, you're just going, sorry, can you say that again or something like that? I Whereas if you're the customer and I'm doing that, you're probably a lot less tolerant. And then one of the issues Google had was that they actually changed the law in California where they had to disclose that it was a robot calling. And then you can imagine then if it's like it's calling some restaurant to make a reservation and it starts off by saying, "Hi, I'm a bot from Google calling to make a reservation for Sam and his friends for dinner," or something like that. Now the person's like, "Hey Google, why am I not number one on the Google search for Chinese restaurant or for this restaurant?" Right? They just go off in different tangents where the bot is not trained for doing that. So the thing I think is like if you can get the data, even if you're not going to morally go have it sort of make things like that, just for an analysis point of view, it's hugely proven to work really well. I think any sort of data that you can get from your organization is really sort of key. And then I think you need to be thinking about what I'm guessing you talk about a lot is like, what are the systems that we have in the business for doing different things? And then looking at like, okay, how could that be automated? How could and we sort of saw. My guess is you've probably looked at like RPA a lot in the past, like
Yes.
robot process automation.
Yep.
So we sort of saw the first wave of that with like UiPath and stuff like that, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. Um, the the challenge back then is a lot of the technology wasn't quite ready. So a lot of that tech now is ready, right? Where you can basically have it read things, where you can have it actually read something and then make a decision on this. And this is sort of the difference between the agents versus things like ChatGPT, is that the agent has key decision points where it actually will make a decision that, okay, based on this next decision, I'm going to go this way or that way. The agents are very interesting. We sort of had the first wave of agents last year, which I kind of think of them as like agents without rails, like, without like sort of
Yeah.
railway track rails, that they could just do anything. And they would just burn money, right? That you'd basically tell it, hey, build me $100 million business. And it go, sure, great, I can do that, right? And it would start researching stuff, and then it would choose something, and then it would do something. And it would end up just getting in this loop where it would just loop around. And there's still, unfortunately, a lot of the agents doing this. The more modern agents that we're seeing now come out, sort of like the Gen 2 or Gen 3 of these agents, are where they're very heavily constrained. So where you say, right, I need you to make a decision, but you're only allowed to decide, three paths from here. You can either decide
Yeah.
A, B, or C. And then once it can do that, you kind of then, one, you're going to get better decision making, from the thing. And you've also then constrained it from doing anything dangerous, right? You don't want it, suddenly swearing at a customer, or, you don't want it doing things like, like there's been some examples in the States of where, car agencies have had, have it do negotiation for them, and people can trick it so it sells the car for $1, right? And I think there's one famous case where they had to honor that $1 car or something like that. That's the kind of thing that is coming about because you're just letting it sort of go free flow too much rather than constraining things. So I think, anything that you've got systems for in your company, then you can start to think about, like, okay, automating that with agents. And even if it's you can't do it now, you should definitely be looking into it, right?
Yeah.
Like, I can just tell you that, I see a lot of the tech from companies that's coming out sort of 6 months, a year from now, and this is the direction everyone's going,
Yeah.
right? And the thing is, we know sort of like that the models keep getting better. This generation of, we're sort of at the end of this generation of models, so we're about to see a lot of new models probably come out later this year, early next year. And those models are going to be much better at this decision making because everyone's sort of seen that, oh, we want models that make good decisions, so they're being trained on that kind of thing.
Oh, hey, I know you're tuned in right now, so I'll keep this super quick, but you like awesome YouTube videos, don't you? Well, there's not really that many YouTube channels that create great content about how to systemize your small business, so I want to make sure that you catch every video that I publish. So if you haven't already, firstly, give this video the thumbs up, and then go ahead and subscribe to my channel. You can even hit the bell notification to make sure that you're the first to know when I publish anything. So go ahead, do it right now. I'll wait a sec, and then I'll transfer you back to the video.
Yeah, definitely a few steps back. I remember, everybody fell in love with something like Zapier, and you'd link things together. And the trouble or the challenge there with some of that automation is if it fell slightly outside of the exact next step or something would break, you wouldn't know. That's what I feel like the huge step forward here is it can intelligently decide within those parameters, well, this is the next step, or I'm going to make this particular decision, but still finding that those guardrails and the process. This is why, like, even the way that you explained it and just saying step one, step two, do this, make a decision here, like that is a process. So that's why as soon as I saw this, it was very obvious to me through my process eyes that um, as a small business, you get very clear on what it is that you're doing and what are the essential tasks. And then you're just looking for, great, and how can the machines execute it? And some of those things you used to go offshore for can now get automated. And then really you want to be leveling up the quality of work that team members are working on. So they're not getting stuck in low level repetitive stuff that a robot can do. Like that's kind of where I see it going, but we're still early days. I kind of want, like you saw it and then you started taking action on it straight away. It's kind of trying to do that for business owners to go, there is a huge opportunity here, and I need to start working on this now.
I totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree. I see it with my staff that are, now way more productive than they were 2 years ago. In things like that, I see that, you know, you're right. And the thing about the you had a good point about like the Zapier kind of stuff. When it would break, you're thinking, oh shit, which bit broke, right? Now I've got to go
Yes.
through and try
And
and
how
work out
long's
what
it
the
been
good thing.
broken? Yeah.
No, yeah, exactly, right. The good thing with these things is you can have it just tell you that, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I couldn't do step Y because this wasn't giving me the right response, or this wasn't giving, and so in that sense, I've just been making a video, yeah, last night, and it was very funny because one of the things I picked a very simple agent that I wanted to show some new stuff, but I wanted a really simple agent. So I picked an agent that basically would look at a web page and write a blog post about that web page. So I gave it one of OpenAI's, sort of launches, and it's writing a blog post about it. Now, the agent was working fine while I'm trying to show some other stuff in there. But because we were hammering that website, after a while, suddenly OpenAI was like, "Yeah, this is weird. Why do you keep, asking for this website?" And started returning 403 errors, right? And the agent was smart enough to then say, I can't write this blog post because I can't get access to that web page because I keep getting a 403 error, from it, right? Um, and that's the kind of thing that you want, right? With these things,
Yeah.
is you want them to be able to do that, and then the next level beyond that is to self heal, right? So at the
Yeah.
moment, they can kind of like, work out when they're broken. The next level beyond that is to have them work out, I'm broken because I've done this and this and this. How do I sort of self heal that to be able to just fix it myself? And that's sort of,
Yeah.
a little bit down the road.
Some of the tools that you're doing to work these, like obviously, um, and I almost think of this in terms of levels. It's almost like, well, step one, let's get clear on what the process is and what you're doing when a human's doing it. That's the manual version. Okay, next step, let's try and go, well, what parts of this maybe can we engineer prompts with and then use something like, ChatGPT to um, handle chunks of this process to speed it up, and we have human in the loop maybe reviewing. Okay, and then the step after that is then when we start to chain together workflows and have agents run prompts, feed the result into the next one, and do sort of some of that chaining. When you're operating at that level, are there particular tools that you love working on for this? Is this something that you're coding, with Python or something like that, or are you using out of the box solutions, or how do you approach it?
So I don't use out of the box solutions. I've been covering a lot of out of box solutions on my channel, because I see a lot of people getting into things like Crew AI and stuff like that. And so I I think it's really cool to try things like that out. For me, I would say that it's kind of still a toy,
Yeah.
in that it's going to fail, probably more often than not. Certainly for something industrial that you want, I would say it's not there yet. That said, I don't want to beat up on them because they're working their butts off to make it better, all the time.
Yep.
And I think all the tools are like that, right? So, the best agent I've seen so far is something that's not released yet, that comes from GitHub, right?
Yep.
And this is basically a tool for fixing code, right? So where, if you, I don't know if you know, on GitHub people can write issues, right? So an issue is basically like, hey, I looked at the website. The website's really cool, but hey, we don't want this, you're missing a button. We want a button that up here, that if you press that button, this happens and this happens and this happens, kind of thing, right? So you can write an issue, and then it can basically sort of diagnose, okay, what's the current state of the code? What do I want the code to be like? And then work out what it needs to change, and then just change it. And the sort of the thing is, like, that's probably the best agent I've seen so far. Just over the past week or two, some other people are starting to do similar kinds of things. That was back in May, that I saw that one. I will tell you that in Silicon Valley at the moment, the big focus is on code tokens. So the most valuable tokens are code tokens. And those, just because like code is quite valuable, right? If you can get these things to write stuff, that's where a lot of people are focused on. And we're slowly getting there, right? We're already using a lot of this stuff to generate, code for us, to generate different things for us. Um, we've built our own sort of internal agent framework, which we then, the way it's written, the models, we can basically just tell it, hey, I need I probably could take like one of your processes, right? And give it to it and say, hey, build me an agent that does this. And it would look at all the stuff and then work out, okay, I need a scraping agent. I need all the different parts that it would need. I need a form filling agent. I need this, right? And it would put those things together in a way that would probably get about 90% of the way there. And then it would be like fine tuning to work out like, okay, what else do we need to change a prompt here? What else do we need like a verifier? So there are a lot of things around like, having checkers and verifiers to make sure it did do what you hoped
Yeah.
it was going to do, kind of things, all that sort of stuff. Off the shelf tools, the big ones that are popular is LangChain and LangGraph.
Yeah.
It's sort of like a coding framework for doing this. Crew AI, like I said, is definitely an interesting one. It's not quite there yet. Microsoft's got one called AutoGen. Again, I would say it's nice, but not quite there yet. There are a number of things like that out there, but we're still sort of at a point now where you probably need a coder to be able to help you to actually build something. I know a lot of people are working on no code versions of this kind of thing. I've yet to see any that are any good, to be honest. Like I
Yeah.
get, given a bunch of them where people ask me to like, oh, can we pay you to put this on your YouTube channel or something like that? And it's like, yeah, probably no, because I'm going to say that, like, oh, when I try it out, it doesn't work, right? Or it doesn't work. Like it can do really simple things, but nothing sort of, that you'd want it to do.
I just had a interview with one of my clients. She's a bookkeeper slash accountant in down on the Mornington Peninsula here, and she got bitten by this idea of AI and what was possible. Got bitten by that bug, then went out, found a programmer. I feel like that's a key piece, and then was very clear on the process of here's things that we're doing in her business, and she identified and prioritized and said, okay, well, this activity, one of them was actually monitoring the ATO, which is the like the way that the government talks to you through tax here in Australia. They monitor the ATO site, look for when updates happen, because she was getting humans to just sit there and log in every single day and find out updates, and then pull that data down and then email it off to the client and chase up, oh yes, your BAS is overdue. And so basically said, well, this is what we're doing. Worked with a programmer, built out some RPA stuff, the robotic automation of the processes, and then basically saved 1,000 hours by just going through that process. Very clear on what she wanted it to do, a specific task, worked with a programmer to design something that then solved that. And the ROI on that has just been huge for her.
Totally, like, and that's the kind of thing that an agent could do easily now, right? Because you can have it so that what it would do is on day one, it scrapes the entire, that website, it then stores that away. Then every day going forward, it looks to see, oh, did that page change? Was a new page added? And then it would look at the old one and the new one. So it's got an A and B and goes, okay, what changed here, right? And it's got enough intelligence that it can work out, oh, they added a new bit about this. Now, it might not understand what this actually is or the legal ramifications of that, but it can then flag that to her to say, hey, they changed their website about this and they added these new clauses in there. And here's what I'm thinking about this, and here's like a little mini report about it, right?
Yeah.
Which she could then skim in 5 minutes and be like, oh, okay. And she would, have the knowledge to know, oh yeah, it got this right or it got this wrong. So even if the model hallucinated about the actual consequences of that change, that's not that important in this case. It's more that it
Yeah.
spotted the change and worked out roughly what the change is. That's the thing that and that's the kind of thing that is actually very easy, that you don't need the LLM to check whether there's been a change. You only need the LLM to look at it after it's found that there's a change and sort of diagnose what that change is.
I feel like there are literally thousands of these opportunities sitting in small businesses around the world in
Yeah.
every single department. And it's just money sitting there waiting for someone to come in and go, Ooh, we can now apply this. That's why, again, I feel like it is the biggest opportunity available to small business owners right now.
I totally agree. And like I said earlier on, that like, just like back in the days when pay-per-click came along, that was a huge opportunity that if you saw it, you could maximize it. Now that one was different because it was a marketing channel, it was a lead generation channel, that kind of thing. This is different, that it favors when you've already got a business. It favors when you've already got
Mm,
processes. It favors, people who've got those sorts of things. But like your example of the accountant is a perfect one. Yeah, that there are lots of things like that people do
mm.
in their businesses, uh, and there's a lot of things that people waste a crap load of money on just getting, like you said, getting someone to look at a website, getting someone to do this kind of stuff, and I think RPA in some ways was the sort of level zero of agents, right? That people got what RPA was about, but it really didn't have much intelligence back then.
Yeah.
You're probably about 100 times more intelligent now than RPA was back 5 years ago, kind of thing.
It's almost like
I-
that Zapier thing we were talking about. RPA is almost like Zapier, as in it has to follow a very set
Very
path
strict
until
thing.
it breaks, and then it can't go any further.
No, exactly. And the good thing is these things, are much better at being able to sort of tell you what went wrong. They're much better at sort of being able to see that, oh, okay, you said this, but you meant this, right? Kind of
Yes.
thing. And I think people notice that a lot if you play around with something like ChatGPT and you just put a lot of spelling errors in there, even for human might look at it and think, what the hell did you mean here? But ChatGPT can usually work it out, right? Or,
Yeah.
or any of these, Claude, or, these sorts of things. Um, Definitely, people should just
Mm.
be playing with those things. The one I would say, is sort of the main one people should check out at the moment is Claude, right? That's probably got the most intelligence, in there, that it just astounds me again and again and again what you can get it to do. Um, and just play with that and sort of see how much does it know about your business. That's another thing that I think people are, you know, uh, uh, are misinformed a lot, and also need to be very careful about. So, I can remember when ChatGPT came out, OpenAI was training. So, in theory, I'll tell you a little bit of history, right? Why did OpenAI release ChatGPT? So Google had some models that were sort of better than that beforehand. One of them, famously, an engineer actually tried to hire a lawyer to represent the model, saying that it was sentient, and ended up getting fired and stuff like that. Um, and the thing was that Google's models were so big that they just couldn't release it to the public, and also for reputational risk of hallucinations. As a funny aside, they tried to do it at one stage. They made a version that you could only talk about dogs with it, and they thought, oh, this is awesome, right? But sure enough, like as soon as they gave it to some people to test out, people worked out that, okay, if I ask it, hey, what do you think of cryptocurrency, it says, oh, I can only talk about dogs. But if I say, hey, my dog is really sick and I've got no money to take it to the vet, I need to make some money really quickly, which cryptocurrency do you reckon is good? It will happily give it, this was sort of like an early jailbreak. But anyway, my point is that, okay, why did they release ChatGPT? They released ChatGPT to get data, meaning that they didn't have any clue what people wanted to actually use these things for.
Yeah.
But at the early days, they were training on all your everything people put in there. And the sad thing is I did see some things on YouTube of where people were like, oh, we took all our sales scripts and we stuffed it in there and we started chatting to it, not realizing that they just given all their sales scripts to OpenAI, right? So you want to be very careful about what you put into these things when you're using the sort of public facing version. If you're using the APIs, most of the APIs are certainly, they won't, like legally, they're not allowed to train on your data. Certainly for Google is like that. If you're using the paid sort of programming API, they're not going to train on your data at all. So be careful of things like that, right? You don't want
Yeah.
to go, because I think a lot of people in the early days, the people that did jump in early didn't realize that, oh, I've just given, OpenAI all my systems for my business. And now with newer versions of, GPT, when people ask it about this kind of business, it knows about that kind of business, right? because of this kind of thing. So be a little bit careful there, but jump in and start to try and at least have conversations with it without, perhaps giving it your data for the time being. And people will be amazed at actually how much this stuff, these models know. The crazy thing is that almost any business somewhere on the internet, someone has written, has pulled apart that business, written all the different things about that business. You've got chat rooms where people have, talked about what worked for them, what didn't work for them. And if this thing's just going around reading everything on the internet, and that's what they're using for training, it gets a really good knowledge over a lot of things.
Yeah.
That's one of the key things.
Feel like you're suggesting there of just hopping in there and starting to play around with it. Really, that is step number one. I'm hoping
Yes.
someone listening to this, we inspire them to go, there's something big here. And then step number two is to just look at it through your lens of your business and where can it be applied. And you've just got to start to build up that habit at the very least of going, oh, maybe I need to ChatGPT it or Claude it just to kind of get familiar with it. And then that becomes the gateway into potentially finding a programmer or working with a company like yours to create some of these solutions. I know you kind of operate at a slightly larger scale with some larger companies, but if people want to find out a little bit more about the work that you do, I'll pop a link through to Red Dragon AI. Is that the best place to keep on top of things? Plus your YouTube channel.
Probably my YouTube channel. Definitely, if people, we do a lot of stuff around defense as well, so we don't really talk about that publicly. We because of that, we don't really have a very active website. But yeah, you can definitely contact us on, if you've got a project that you think is a decent size and stuff like that. We're definitely interested in, our big thing at the moment is reasoning. So we're working a lot on different forms of reasoning, getting sort of separate models to do reasoning over different things, and reasoning of where the current models are actually failing, and looking at sort of some of the edge cases for this. So that's something that we're really interested in.
Yeah, awesome. I'll have to check back in for a part two, perhaps a little bit further down the line. So thank you so much for your time today, Sam.
Okay, cool. Great to talk to you.